You're fine there. Okay, welcome back, WARP members. We are unbelievably, we are to our final presentation of the WARP program. So I'm going to welcome Deborah Chandler up, who's going to introduce Marilyn, and then we'll hear from her.
Ready as you're ever going to be. Oh, I can use this. Hi. Oh. Again. Marilyn and I were just talking about when we actually met. And we met on an airplane. She remembered better than I did. In 1981. And at that time, she was in Chicago. And I can hardly wait to hear more about what she was doing in Chicago, because I remember some of it. What I mostly remember is being completely dazzled. And I've been dazzled by her ever since. And you know what? You're safe. I forgot to bring the paper up.
I'm safe.
It means I'm not going to read everything that you've ever done. But when I read her whole, so when the write-up that's in the flyer you all got has about half of what she's done on it. And I finished reading that and I thought, God, what have I been doing for the last 40 years? So since you came to hear Marilyn, not me, that's my introduction.
Well, thank you, Deb.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Thank you, Deb, for the introduction, and for WARP for inviting me to speak today. I realize I am the last presenter at 5 p.m. on a Friday, with so many incredible speakers that went before me. So I'm going to try to do my best to keep this on track, which means I'm going to be reading a lot, because if I go off script, I may devote like the whole time to one section. So we're not going to do that, right? Okay. So the title of my presentation is Keeping Textile Heritage Relevant: How Artisans and Organizations Are Meeting the Moment. This is a journey in three parts, where one path really leads into the next. The first part is my personal landscape. The second will be the changing landscape in the broad artisan market. And then the last is the textile artisan landscape. A big chunk of the center part actually will have a significant resource section, which we will receive after the conference, right, Kelsey? Yeah, okay. So let's start. Personal landscape as it relates to what was also taking place in the U.S. textile fiber artisan market at that time. This is a really crude timeline, but highlighted in yellow is like my landscape. So we have the decades, sort of like really the 70s up until now. And then, what was transpiring at that time? What influenced me? The pink section are all the other related organizations, schools, businesses that influenced me. And so you can see, what really started, right, in the 70s and went on. And then the last is the Textile Arts Center, which I will talk about as part of this. I was in college working on a BFA in art and a double major in clothing and textiles. And I used to go to the weaving workshop in Chicago, where I shopped for my fiber supplies. At that time in Chicago, the weaving workshop was one of 4 other weaving stores, one just a few miles away. This was in the 1970s. After graduating, I taught tapestry weaving there, and I asked the owner for a job. I think that's the next slide. Yeah, there you go. I asked the owner for a job. Fortunately, she gave me one, and a few years later, her life changed, and I bought the store on a payment plan because, I was a poor, just out of school student. Come to the very end of the 70s, early 80s, the weaving workshop was growing with inventory, classes. You can note a natural dye class going on in the backyard patio. and a very robust artist series program. So I began talking to a group of advisors with the idea of opening a textile center. Hence, in 1984, I moved the store to a double storefront with the weaving workshop on one side and the new Textile Arts Center on the other. Over the next year, TAC became a nonprofit with a gallery, an extensive classroom space, dye and print studio, and a library. The weaving workshop on the other storefront sold all things fiber-related, so it was a good symbiotic relationship. The center offered classes and lectures, held global artisan markets, plus 3 folk and tribal arts festivals at Navy Pier. And in 1993, we hosted Tradition and Transition, a textile symposium, which was attended by over 500 artists, teachers, and students from all sectors of the fiber arts community. The only previous one before the center was sponsored by Fiberworks in Berkeley, which was in 1978. So soon, the Textile Arts Center Chicago really became the go-to place for all things related to the textile arts. So we go back to the timeline. You can see the other California-based centers. They were really the breeding ground for so many of our superstars today. You know, Ann Wilson, Leah Cook, Annalisa Hedstrom, Yoshi Kawada. I mean, I could go on, and there were many others around that time. But in the 80s and 90s, the degreed schools sent out another message, that the ability or inability, as it were, to prepare craft-based graduates for the future. Programs closed, department names changed. I mean, how many of you remember fighting for fiber-based programs to remain part of a curriculum? You know, I mean, we were constantly getting messages from universities saying, oh, they want to close us down, they want to change our name, et cetera. But companies like Interweave Press, Fiber Arts, fiber-related businesses, and HGA and Convergence, and other organizations like WARP that you saw over time, right, in 1992 when WARP began, they were thriving. So what was that about, right? So come 1994, I had the opportunity to begin a graduate program in material culture at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, or move to Colorado and work with Linda Ligon at Interweave Press. So you know my choice, right? So here I am now, at Interweave. I don't have images here, I'm sorry. It was, pre-internet imagery with so many things. But the first event I coordinated was Nature's Dyes. Some of you may have even attended that. This was at the forefront of the rise in natural dyes in many sectors of the textile market. Michelle Whiplinger from Hearth Hues, Kathy Hattori, who's now Botanical Colors. She worked at Earth Hues with Michelle for many years, and there was so much more going on that was starting during that time period. So then enter the World Wide Web when everything started to change. Mid to late 90s, so much certainly in the publishing sector, and in the first decade of 2000, the impact that it really had on the publishing sector was significant. Interweave was changing quickly, growing, adding properties, lots of staff. I don't know, I think I had 120 direct reports. I mean, it was significant time, hence probably this blank, just interweave screen there. So in 2010, I chose to retire from interweave to return to my textile artisan roots, but I wasn't really clear on, what that really would mean. But it did begin a conversation among 4 of my former colleagues from interweave, and we formed Thrums, which then morphed into Cloth Roads and Thrums Books. So with Cloth Roads, when we were developing our mission, it was broad. We wanted to keep it broad enough so that it could change over time. So we had creating opportunities for supporting Indigenous textile artisans worldwide. We really didn't know what that would all encompass, and the photo on the bottom left is my 4 amigas in front of the Museo Ixchel on a trip with Deb Chandler, Linda Ligon, Suzanne Diatley, Linda Stark, Dee Lockwood, and myself. So in looking at Cloth Road's mission, we knew we wanted to support the beauty, skill, and textile legacies of the artisans we met. We aimed to create new market opportunities for these artisans and cultures with a fair and sustainable commerce model, while using our publishing skills to educate, inform, and foster textile appreciation. So in 2011, we launched online with Cloth Roads. We created a marketplace for high-quality Indigenous textiles, a lively blog, resources, and travel opportunities to bring others along with us on this journey. With travel, particularly when we started, it was very tied into the books, which I'll talk about here, right? Okay, so I'm going to go back. We really felt that through the stories of the people we were meeting, that we were helping to raise the awareness of these artisans worldwide. And it's now textile travel is now one of the most significant and desired for connection, experiential learning that's going on. I mean, it's amazing how much textile cultural travel is going on at this point in time, post-COVID. So, sister company, Thrums Books, Linda Ligon with photographer Joe Coca and associate publisher Karen Brock, they went on to produce an amazing range of books focused on the global textile artisans and so much more. And most of these books, some of you here, we know you're here. Linda and Karen and Joe worked with you on these. So over the years, Cloth Roads and Thrums Books took on different forms, and as life needs and the world changed, so did we. Enter next. So the Center for Traditional Textiles of Cusco, which I talked a bit about the other day, and I'll present more about them later, but I'm mentioning them now because they have a direct link to many aspects of what I'm presenting. Founded by weaver Nilda Cayanapa Alvarez, established in Peru as a nonprofit in 1996. Nilda's Quechua and is from the town of Chinchero, northwest of Cusco. I had met Nilda while at Interweave when we published her first book, and she taught at the annual spinning retreat SOAR. I had the opportunity of visiting many of the CTTC communities while I was in Peru in 2007, the first of many visits there. And I attended the first Tincui, which was the international gathering of weavers in Peru in 2010. And after the second Tincui in 2013, I was invited to join the board of Andean Textile Arts. So ATA was founded in 2000 when CTTC was young and in its formative stage. It started really as a U.S. friend-type organization of CTTC, helping them with organizational issues, grant writing, fundraising for their current center in Cusco. ATA also assisted them with establishing structure for working with the weaving communities and purchasing of their textiles. It funded what has become a very important and critical program, the Young Weavers Group. Of course, over time, both nonprofits have grown and changed, but ATA's mission has changed very little, supporting the people of the Andes in their efforts to preserve and revitalize their textile traditions. After almost 25 years, we have just begun expanding programming and support beyond CTTC and have begun projects, grants, and tours in Bolivia. We have toes in the water in Ecuador, but the pandemic and political unrest has caused stop-start action. And the pandemic, as we know, stopped us all. ATA had to quickly look at ways we could raise awareness and funds for CTTC and the weavers when there was no tourism, no funds coming to the weavers and their families. But thanks to internet and Zoom, we began textile talks, a book club. We moved our guild program online. We had benefit programs with CTTC. We started an online auction and so much more. Since COVID, I had to choose where to put my focus, so it was a choice on cloth roads or Andean textile arts. I simply couldn't do both. So in considering artisan impact, I chose ATA for the time being. And with cloth roads, I still publish a monthly global events calendar, and it's unknown where the cloth roads will take me next. So other influences that were happening at that same time that cloth roads was in development. In 2010, Mary Luttrell, with her co-author Marcia Dixon, published a book, Artisans and Fair Trade Crafting Development. And then in 2012, they published Social Responsibility in the Global Market, Fair Trade of Cultural Products. When I interviewed Mary in 2012, I asked her what she thought were the top 3 keys to sustaining artisan enterprises. She said the nature of leadership, marketing and markets, making sure that there are multiple markets in terms of who is served, and product, really developing product for the global market, groups that have figured out how to hold on to their tradition and be able to meet external demand. The other influence at that time was the Artisan Alliance, which was founded in 2012. You can read their mission here on screen. But at the first meeting of the Alliance, it was held in Santa Fe in 2014, they established this mission, but they also established the following priorities. I highlighted the key words, as you'll see in these next 2 sections of this presentation. These keys entered into the ethos of what has and is transpiring today. 1, increasing the public understanding, and I'm just going to read the key words. Provide greater opportunity for young people, improve access to new markets, to connect folk artists with each other, to create a more compelling experience. And this is in all sectors, right? Museum, market, community. Okay. So now I'm going to move into the changing landscape in the broad artisan market. After a drink of water. This section, as I mentioned, has an extensive online resource, which WARP will be making available. And I want to thank my friend Elaine Lipson, who provided most of the research and resources for this section. Again, you can see different colors here. I'll be talking about all of these. So The very first one I'm going to start with is the legacy organizations. And again, these are just sample ones. So it's important to look at a few well-known ones that have been supporting all sectors of the artisan market for years, not just textiles. They have been leaders to many of the current issues and groups and have been feeders to new organizations. These and many others have survived challenges in the past few years as consumer behavior has shifted in response to the pandemic, climate change, changing economic and political conditions, and purchasing frameworks such as consolidation, e-commerce, and supply chain issues. 10,000 Villages sells objects made by artisans in more than 20 developing countries through a network of brick-and-mortar retail stores, some of which have closed recently, and an online shopping platform. For 75 years, they have been pioneers in all forms of fair trade. They are a founding member of the World Fair Trade Organization. And not only has that been a significant contribution to the field as a whole, it's also been a significant impact to artisans, $110 million in artisan investments over the last 19 years. Kiva Microfunds. Kiva is a pioneer in microloans for those with little access to capital. It provides finance access where others don't. It's a stepping stone for access to more capital. And Kiva loans create a virtuous cycle of improved business outlook, growth, and confidence. I know some of the artisan groups that I've talked with have used Kiva especially for cash flow issues, seasonal, where they need to buy supplies in January for the wet season starts or the dry season to be able to have products ready for sale for the fall, but cash flow doesn't allow it. So Kiva has been a great resource for them. Aid to Artisans. Aid to Artisans is an innovator in helping artisans partner with local and international gift trade shows and in training artisans to build businesses and relationships that help ensure sustainable livelihoods. They also had, I don't know if they still do, the small grant program that artisans could apply for. And in their recent 10-year impact report, they noted programs implemented in 61 countries, and you can see other specifics are noted on screen. They do have a lot of really great online educational programs as well for artisans. So let's quickly look at a few post-2000 organizations who are bridging and connecting artisans and buyers and how they're different from the legacy ones. In these organizations, we see integration of key aspects to connect global artisans, buyers, and supporters. These aspects include attention to climate change as a threat to cultural heritage and sustainable livelihoods, as well as a business consideration. Data tracking and improved impact reporting, online training programs that improve accessibility, and the internet as an integral part of the design of the organization, rather than add on to traditional communications or storefronts. Sustainability, transparency, inclusivity, reduced or zero waste, and conscious consumerism are some of the key words that these organizations use to define their values. Justice and equity are now in the forefront as part of an ongoing sustainable livelihood concerns and current climate change issues. Next, post-2007, you can see their mission on screen, but along with targeted development programs, NEST is building new models of data capture and impact measurement to paint a more detailed picture of how social and environmental factors are affecting the artisan sector. NEST developed and released what appears to be one of the only impact reports with data sets on how climate change is affecting artisans and how the artisans are responding to it, both in how and where they work and in changing their production models to reflect environmental sustainability. Ethical Fashion Initiative. This is a flagship program founded in 2009 of the International Trade Center, a joint agency of the United Nations and World Trade Organization. And since its founding, EFT has worked with countless designers, artisans, and entrepreneurs with dozens of global brands and institutions in the fashion and other creative industries. And last, and this is only the example of one such site, there are many others out there, Flourish Planet. This is a direct-to-consumer, maker-center online model for sales of artisan-made goods with an emphasis on mission-driven storytelling for engagement. So how has the conversation changed? Particularly really fast, 10 years. The vocabulary in the world of artisan knowledge and production has evolved to reflect and articulate new ideas, goals, and visions, and to connect social and environmental themes. This word world shows many of the terms that are part of today's discussions. They're wide-ranging and intersect with many of the important issues of our time. So let's look at just a few of these words. Sustainable. It's widely used to indicate an interest or commitment to good environmental and ethical practices, but there is no industry-wide or global consensus on what it means or how to measure it. While it's still an important concept, its overuse weakens it, and it's helpful for both organizations and artisans to consider their use of this word and set specific parameters for production. Greenwashing. New marketing words and phrases have come into use. Many, such as green or eco-friendly, lack clarity and can easily be co-opted by marketers in various forms of what is often called greenwashing. Sharing information about materials and resources used, labor practices, certifications, such as using certified organically grown fibers, and handmade methods can help tell your story and demonstrate your values accurately. Cultural heritage. UNESCO has a worldwide presence and is a leader in the identification, protection, and preservation of cultural and natural heritage around the world, considered to be of outstanding value for humanity. For UNESCO, traditional crafts and the skills and knowledge used to create them are identified as intangible cultural heritage. Some that are in the need of urgent safeguarding include akla, pina, hand weaving in the Philippines, sericulture and traditional production of silk for weaving in Afghanistan, in other countries, the art of embroidery in Palestine, and many more. Textile cultural heritage includes objects in museums, libraries, and other collections that must be protected from environmental damage, destruction in wars and conflicts, terrorism, theft, and other forms of loss. Briefly, certifications, third-party certifications can influence buyers and help artisans to establish their use of ethical practices. These certifications, such as Fair Trade, Organic, B Corp, they can all help to support environmental and ethical claims. And the certification remains important to many buyers and partners, assuring them that their funds are being used in ways that support their intentions and values. Impact measurement. A key tool for NGOs, especially in evaluating their strategies and programming. As data gathering and tracking methods have become more sophisticated, impact measurements can become more granular, targeted, and informative over time. They provide information to donors and potential donors about measurable outcomes. They can create a complete portrait of financial health and meaningful results. They can aid in strategic planning. They confirm whether the work of the organization is on mission. I have an example of Andean Textile Art's current annual report that just came out on screen, where we talk about our key impacts during 2023. One such example of how to tell a story of impact measurement, multicolores. Many of you know from WARP, but this is a great example, and this is online. By clearly stating 3 overarching measurement areas: economic empowerment, social inclusion and solidarity, and environmental stewardship, they offer key related data points for each of these areas, painting a complete picture of a mission-driven and community-focused small organization. The other, let's see, let me go back. I'll go back to the previous slide. Alex, I don't know if you can. But 60 Decibels is an impact measurement organization used by artisan groups such as Friendship Bridge, Kiva, and others. They have expertise in artisan critical areas such as social enterprises, micro and small businesses, gender equality, and they're well suited for the goals and tactics of artisan organizations. Okay, strategies. New resources and support organizations are emerging to meet the needs of cultural heritage and artisan work in a rapidly changing world. The Climate Resilient Resource for Cultural Heritage is a free one-stop shop of resources for heritage stewards and communities, sites, and organizations of all sizes and locations in the U.S. and its territory. Resilience is measured in the ability for artisans to recover effectively and successfully adapt to challenges through flexibility and adjustment to external and internal needs. Good Must Grow is a marketing and strategic communications firm for sustainable brands, nonprofits, social enterprises. And as we've seen in the artisan sector, it's expanded greatly. The networks and resources have as well. The various channels for their products to get into the hands of the consumer have increased as well. And I'm just going to touch a bit on sourcing, consulting, import and export market, and the most prestigious faux art market in the world in Santa Fe every July. Annie O. Waterman, AOW Handmade. Annie has spent the past 16 years working within the artisan sector, some of those years with Karen Gibbs of By Hands Consulting. Annie travels far and wide to bring the best vendor resources to retailers looking for exquisite, less saturated, hand-picked, handmade finds. Currently, Annie represents hundreds of artisans in about 15 countries, 60% which are textile-based. And of those, about 30 are traditional, and the rest merge traditional with a contemporary twist. Although Annie lives in Paris now, her market is primarily in the US, but she has a growing network in Europe. In the past year, she has seen a rise in contemporary design and a more minor focus on 100% traditional. But Annie is emphasizing traditional again so as not to dilute the sense of provenance and know-how to keep products unique to a region and cultures they belong to. Okay, oops, hold on. I connected with Annie last month and asked her what she's seeing in terms of the next generation learning of skills. And she said, in Europe, I'm seeing a decrease in craft and working with some of the last artisans who preserve these crucial craft know-how. They're often in their 80s and are the gatekeepers of such craft. But in other countries, Africa, India, Southeast Asia, and Latin America, I see a general rise in artisan companies and brands. Prices are increasing, so it's hard to it's becoming more difficult for wholesalers to find artisan partners at a price that competes within the marketplace. This is due to inflation, wars, and high shipping costs. Retailers want custom-made items in small quantities and often exclusive to their store. This is a lot to ask of an artisan group, but you all, many of you do that, right? So here's her forecast for the future of handmade. Artisan-made goods will always have a strong foothold in the marketplace. The basics will be hard to compete with, so there will be an increase in new and unique designs because people love new. And here we need to be better storytellers, invest in photography, educate our consumers about the behind the scenes, and give recognition to traditional craft to keep the sense of provenance. Otherwise, we're simply diluting the sector with far too many similar products, all competing on price. International folk art market. And you can see why these artists look at the market, because look at these stats. Okay, from their website, traditional lifestyles are threatened by economic forces that split communities apart, devalue handcrafted tradition, and disrupt knowledge handed down from generation to generation. Yet handmade art represents the second largest industry in emerging nations, and therefore holds the potential for large-scale positive social change. Many of the IFAM artists represent their communities as leaders who uphold ancestral traditions. They train the next generation, and IFAM sets precedents for quality, technique, and sustainability. By the numbers, now this is on average, this is just the whole market. I'm going to quote numbers, information on just textiles of what I was able to get from the last 3 years. So you can look at it in comparison, and particularly in comparison to an average of $3 million in purchases over the 3 days of the market. And I know there's definitely been years where that's been more and probably some less. And I'm talking recent years. So in 2022, there were 187 textile artist applications with 67 accepted. Now, that doesn't mean all those artists could get to the market, visas, whatever, But of that, 1.4 million was textiles. So if their average is 3 million, 1.4 million of that was textile related. In 2023, we received 144 textile applications with 64 textile artists selected, but 1.65 million sold in textiles. And in this year, for 2024 market, we received 270 textile applications. Staggering, right? Now, I'm on the selection committee, and what I review is just a chunk of that 270. And we looked at a lot of incredible applications. Of that, 81 were selected of textile artists. Now, again, that doesn't mean there's going to be that many at the market this year because it goes through many layers of process after selection committee. So the last in this section, and I'm not going to go through this because it's in the document that you'll be receiving, But these are funding resources. They're not all of them. They're artisan-based ones, and they're ones that a number of artisan groups who I've talked with have used or have supported their organizations for a number of years. So again, this will be included in the resources to come. So now I will go into the last section, the textile artisan landscape. So this part narrows down the extensive artisan world just to textiles, and the one most of us here participate in. So in looking back at the decade of 2010 and the priorities that were established by the Artisan Alliance at that time, all of these people and organizations have knowingly or unknowingly made great strides in elevating the artisan sector. There are many, many more groups and people I connected with this past year, and I thank every one of them for responding to my queries. If I presented all of it, we'd be here for a week-long class. So I pulled out ones that I know well, that I've worked closely with or have worked with Cloth Roads or have followed for more than a decade. India and beyond, Judy Frater. In the late 80s, Judy was associate curator at the Textile Museum in Washington, D.C. In 1990, she received 2 fellowships to India. It was while in Gujarat, while studying Suf embroidery, an artisan asked her, "Why are you studying us? Why don't you help us?" While working closely with artisans at Kalaraksha, she comprehended their tremendous creative capacity and that it was largely unrecognized. This eventually led her to developing a design education program for traditional artisans, first the Kalaraksha Vidyalaya and then the Samaya Kala Vidya. Judy is internationally recognized for the great success with this program, and since she returned to the U.S. about 4 years ago, she has immersed herself in co-design projects with Kutch artisans and U.S. universities and museums. While Zoom has made these collaborations possible, she always tries to bring artisans with her during co-design projects, which of course means external funding. Her new book, Artisan by Design, releases this November. She's invited 2 Kutch-based artisans, textile artisans, to travel with her to talk about the value of design education and offer workshops and trunk shows. One of these venues is going to be at the Manitou Springs Art Center here in Colorado, and she's interested in looking at other locations within the greater 4 states. If you know of some of you know Judy directly, but you can reach her URL, textileslive.com. And for those of you who are live streaming this, these links are all live in this program. Judy stated 3 aspects, key aspects of artisan development. The design challenge is to innovate on traditions for the contemporary market without losing the essential identity, to embrace tradition and innovate appropriately. And the individuals who can do this best are the artisans as keepers of cultural heritage. For designers, the challenge is to engage artisans in co-design as equal partners with mutual respect and value. And one facet that is our part is the approach of consumers and designers. When we speak of craft and artisans, we use words like languishing and intervention. We need to find a new language, and changing the perception to do so requires education, especially practical education and contact and experience. Other keys that she mentioned is cross-pollination, of textile techniques is critical as well. There needs to be a domestic market. In India, the market wants innovation, and the plus of innovation is there isn't competition. An agency is critical. The artisan needs to be engaged firsthand versus working for someone else. If you work with your hands as a creative, you want to make. So the connection with Judy is Zakia Adil Khatri. Zakia is a graduate from the design education program at Kalarakshavi, as well as the business management program there. She also participated in one of Judy's collaborative projects with students at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. I met Zakia at the Tingui Gathering in Cusco, Peru in 2017, where she accompanied Judy Frater as invited artisans. Zakia is a bandhani artist from Cochin, Gujarat, having learned the technique from her mother starting at the age of 4. Bandhani artisans come from the Khatri lineage. Traditionally, men create the designs and dye, and the women tie the fine dot-resist patterns. When she began her studies at Kalaraksha School, she naturally chose bandhani. It was at KRV that she learned many new things about design. When we think we know nothing, that is the beginning of education. This is quoted from her. Through principles, there are many ways to make traditional designs new. After taking a color class, I learned new concepts for use. After taking basic design, I saw rhythm, movement, balance everywhere. Challenge takes you ahead. When I recently talked with Zakia and asked her about post-COVID changes for her, she said that in India, it is their biggest market for them, for their sale of their products. They also use Instagram to sell their work. She said it used to be a challenge to sell online, but since COVID, people seem more confident of using it as a platform. Lots of people share images to others, so it's very word of mouth. It's critical to have good images online. We have one-to-one sales, custom orders, small boutiques ordering 20 to 30 pieces, then reordering. Many travelers come to Kutch area from Europe. They go home, they share the work, and more orders come in. She and her husband Adil, who she met in school, run the business together, and they have as much work as they want right now because they're also enjoying their new 10-month-old daughter. Okay, here we are back at Multicolores. We've looked a bit at Multicolores earlier, but I want to share a little bit more key information. Multicolores artists make one-of-a-kind, unique products, rich in color, motif, and design that reflect the artisan's individual artistic voice. As such, this has impacted their ability to scale. The pieces are viewed as textile art and can generate high returns, which we saw folk art market numbers, right? There is potential and room to grow in home decor and textile art markets, both for gallery, large corporate, small retailers, and individuals. In the beginning, Marianne Wise, who's the co-founder of Multicolores, it wasn't on her radar to work in Guatemala or start a nonprofit. But when she arrived in Guatemala and saw how much paca, recycled clothing, was arriving in Guatemala, she sees an opportunity. These are early rugs, 2011. Design training had started from the get-go with Marianne. She has a deep respect for Guatemala weaving traditions and to retain cultural heritage. The rugs have to look like they come from Guatemala. 2011, 2023. This is, so go back to Judy Frater's point in time, right? The artists' design training and the impact of design and innovation over the years. You can see it here in these products, right? 2011, 2023. By the numbers. Executive Director Cheryl Conway shared current stats with me, including all these on screen. IFAM, 39% of their income. For a number of years, Multicolores has maintained its position as one of the top sellers at IFAM. They opened their online store in 2020. Cheryl said it's helped the artists sell their work, making up about 20% of sales since 2020. And to date, clicks convert into sales at a higher rate through e-blasts rather than Facebook and Instagram. Different than what we just saw with Zakia, right? They are working to increase sales through social media and expand audience numbers. Okay, Akpak Tak in Laos. Akpak Tak means east meets west. Started in Laos as a social enterprise in 2000 by indigenous weaver Vao Mane. And in this screen on the left, her mom's on the right. Recent photo of them when I visited there last year. And her partner, Joanna Smith, who was a photographer from England who was traveling through Laos at that time, and she chose to stay. They're based in Luang Prabang, and they're almost 25 years old. The philosophy behind Akpak Tak is to empower women through the use of their traditional skills and promote the beauty of Lao textiles worldwide. Following the principles of fair trade, they advance the artistic, cultural, and social development of Lao artisans and increase the appreciation of these diverse textiles and communities through educational activities and so much more. So that much more that is now part of what they're doing over this almost 25 years. Guests come to Akpak Tak for the full experience. A free tour to learn more about the different aspects of textile production, to take a class, to see the master weavers in action and shop for what they've seen made there. They can relax in the luxuriant gardens or by the Mekong. They can eat something inspired by the fusion between East meets West, or stay in one of the guest rooms decorated with Lao textiles. This is from Jo, who she said, during the pandemic, and a lot of this I'm going to just quote directly from what she told me, we learned we definitely should not have all our eggs in one basket. Hence, why even though tourists have picked up in Luang Prabang, we haven't put an end to the initiatives we started or enhanced during the pandemic. We took our philosophy of Discover Laos through Textiles Online, adding many videos to our YouTube channel, and launching our very own DIY kits for purchase in the web shop. It was very successful, so much so that we launched several of these kits and are working on more. You can see one of the earring DIYs there. We also created a mini Lao version of the International Folk Art Market image from the recent market, thus offering a marketplace to artisans coming from the different provinces throughout Laos. It was so popular that we were asked to host one in the capital, and the one at our Living Crafts Center in Luang Prabang has now become an annual event with people coming from all over the world to attend it. And storytelling is a major part of our marketing strategy. And they are pros at it, particularly social media. For us, social media has allowed us to tell our story and our artisan stories more easily and more frequently. Customers use our social media more than a website. Customers often ask us about our challenges. One of them is how we make weaving and production of handcrafts attractive to the younger generation. We try to do this, one, proving that handcrafts and weaving are viable ways of making an above decent living. And 2, by raising the social profile of the artisans by putting them in the spotlight, either by participating in exhibitions around the world that promote crafts, or in this case, a recent collaboration with photographers Nicolas Henry and Florian Delasay. They are literally putting these artisans in the spotlight in these images. The artisans are surrounded by the utensils and objects that they use to create their craft and crafts themselves. Spotlighting the artisans this way goes back to our commitment to raising the social and financial profile of the artisans in Laos, both here and abroad. Okay, we're back at the center. Told you it's all connected. So I'm going to go back to the key points that Mary Luttrell had made when I interviewed her back in 2012. So, nature of leadership, right? Mary had 3 key points. First one, nature of leadership. Nilda Kayanapa is considered a rock star among the international artisan community. She's a strong and passionate leader and speaker. Her efforts to revitalize natural dyeing and many of the pre-Columbian techniques has propelled many other connections and other weaving groups to form in all of the Sacred Valley. Marketing and markets in terms of multiple markets in terms of who they serve. Second point that Mary had made. They have direct-to-consumer. They have internal and external in the sense of course, tourism, but not yet to the extent of Peruvians themselves, which in India we saw differently. They are one of the legacy co-ops, artisan groups at the Folk Art Market this year, 20th anniversary. They sell their products through Novica online. They sell their products in one of these pictures here is this little display at the Textile Museum in DC. They've hosted 3 tinkuis. They've worked with Andean Textile Arts, who we promote. We give grants for undertaking revitalization projects. They have an internship project with weavers, and there's so much more I could go on, and there's still work to be done. And then the final key point that Mary Luttrell had made was product and global markets, groups that have figured out how to hold on to their tradition and be able to meet external demand, which, that's always a work in progress, right? Because the world is always changing in terms of what consumers want. Okay, last connection here. Told you this would all circle around and connect. And I realized after Megan's presentation today, it connects even more. Connecting the dots. Early on in Clothroads, someone gave me good advice. She said, "You may think you know where the global artisan road will take you, but be ready for the adventure, because it will be." This here is one such story. We met Bonnie Shoup while she was finishing up her degree in fiber art and apparel design at Colorado State University. We were looking for an intern at Clothroads, and Bonnie was a perfect candidate. She remembers her first visit to our space and looking through inventory. I was in awe of the textures, techniques, processes used in the global textiles. This is her quote. "I felt like I was in a textile museum, only I could touch these textiles." At the same time, after learning more about CTTC's weavers, textiles, and meeting its director, Nilda Kayanapa, during an exhibit at CSU, she wanted to experience Peru firsthand, applied for a 3-month internship at CTTC, and Clothroads asked her to co-design a pillow line with the CTTC weavers. She now says of her work in CTTC, quote, "I have a deep respect for the balance at which living things coexist, and I'm committed to creating environmental change. Much of my independent time is spent researching sustainability, looking at triple bottom line, co-design fundamentals," which she said are critical fundamentals to CTTC as well, and the weaving groups. She said these artisans go through every step required to make cloth, starting with shearing sheep to finished textiles. Non-waste and low consumption are cultural. These artisans are not just following the sustainable trend, they're creating textiles as a standard I can only strive for. So fast forward to now with Bonnie. Paca, right? Why am I showing Paca? Okay, founded in Peru. Outdoor clothing, hence Megan, where are you? Mentioning, CSU graduates. Bonnie was in that department, and she had a background in outdoor sportswear. So Paca, founded by Chris Cody, who was an avid outdoor sports guy. Chris's mom is a Spanish teacher, and he was intrigued by Peru, so he went to Cusco, and while hiking, he acquired an alpaca sweater. Met some Cusco knitters, he was hooked. In 2017, he launched a Kickstarter project for making some alpaca sweaters. He exceeded his goal by 1,700% and formed a team in Peru. Paca has grown 300% each year the last 2 years. These are current numbers. Chris reached out to Bonnie because of her background and work in the outdoor sportswear and her work with merino and alpaca fibers. She had rebuilt the Ibex brand. He didn't know of her internship with CTTC or her relationship with Nelda, nor the design work she had done with Clothroads a decade before. Bonnie, the team up there, she's now vice president of product. She told me, Paca is hitting every consumer trend right now that people want to spend their money on. Since COVID, we all stopped and looked at what we're consuming and spending time on. People want to do something better for the world and not just churning the machine. The younger generations are naturally looking more at these artisanal traditions, what they're spending their time and money on, and they have cultural curiosity. Chris Cody's been a good connector with CTTC. Avery Flood, who is also a former CSU student, Clothroads intern, she's helping, working with Bonnie right now in working with CTTC with some new designs. They're making bracelet packets. This is from Paca's website showing CTTC and the Chowatiri community, I think. Avery's also been living in Guatemala for a while. She's, her father is Guatemalan, and doing other design work as well. So this is my last slide. This is a leading paragraph into a white paper from the Berkana Institute. And for those of you that might have followed Meg Wheatley for a long time, I know I have. This is recent, and I highlighted the key points. In spite of current ads and slogans, the world doesn't change one person at a time. It changes as networks of relationships form among people who discover they share a common cause and the vision of what's possible. This is good news for those of us intent on changing the world and creating a positive future. Rather than worry about critical mass, our work is to foster critical connections. We don't need to convince large number of people to change. Instead, we need to connect with kindred spirits. Through these relationships, we will develop the new knowledge, practices, courage, and commitment that leads to broad-based change. I believe that all of us here with WARP agree with this wholeheartedly. And I'm certainly open to where the cloth road will take me next. Thank you. Is it happy hour time? Is it? Do you want to take Q&A, or do we have time, or you want to wrap it up?
We're almost 10 past the hour. Maybe we can have one burning question.
One burning question. Who has one burning question? Yes, in the back.
Here, I can run. Oh, the mic's to her. I'm coming, Beth. Folks are hungry.
It is unfortunately not a burning question. It is actually some sad news to share. I just wonder if anybody else spent most of your waking hours at Pacific Basin Textile School of Textile Arts in the 70s, like I did. Inger Jensen, one of the directors, recently passed away. So if any of you knew Inger and are interested in knowing what she did, what she's did with her life after Pacific Basin closed, let me know, and I will tell you.
Thank you, Beth.
Thank you for sharing, Beth. Okay, are we gonna head to dinner? Deborah has something.
I was just going to say, be sure to tell them how they can reach you, so when their burning questions come up in 5 or 10 minutes, they can write to you later.
Well, I am on the list, murphy@clothroads.com. Right. Thank you.